computer. 1 sec. Let me just check what episode I'm on because I lost track.
Yeah, dude, no worries. No worries.
You're the first Ifbb pro I've had on.
No shit.
Yeah. I mean, I've only had a couple of guests, but let's see. What's this? Number 6. Okay. All right. How's it going, everybody? This is going to be the Conscious Bodybuilding podcast, episode number 7. Today we have Chris Tuttle on. Chris is an RDN. He has a master's in dietetics. Is that what it is?
Correct. No, it's bachelor's in dietetics, master's in nutrition. And the RD is basically a registered dietitian, meaning you have to take a national recognized exam so you can practice nutrition in a hospital and so forth.
And that also, I had actually one of my last guests was RDN as well, and that allows you. I know you specialize with nutrition-related disease, and that allows you to work with people with diabetes and other conditions like that, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Cool. You are also an Ifbb pro, which is awesome, and you also run a nutrition company with your wife, Alexia. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. You said her name right. Nobody ever gets her name right.
I made sure I watched the video and you saying it. I'm always really trying to be on top of pronunciation.
That's impressive.
Cool. Yeah. Well, if you don't mind, could you give my audience like maybe just a brief like timeline? I think your kind of your background is really cool, like where you started, and I know you started with motocross, and I think that actually influenced where you are currently, if I'm not mistaken, a little bit. So if you could just maybe run down your timeline of where you started to like where you're at now, you know?
Yeah, for sure. All right, so I'll try to make this as a brief synopsis. So I've been obsessed with dirt bikes since I was a little kid, and so finally I got my parents to get me one when I was on age 4.5, 5. Started racing. It was terrible when I first started, and I got a trainer. That trainer put me on a nutrition program, very basic, just, healthy whole foods, make sure every meal has good amount of protein in it. And he gave me an exercise program, which would be more conducive to say CrossFit now, right? More full body, barbell work, high speed, that kind of thing. And my body responded really quickly. I saw a noticeable difference in my muscles, in my appearance that was pointed out to me by my friends, I think around 7th grade, 6th grade. Yeah. So I was like, wow, I didn't realize that lifting weights made your body change. And that sparked my first interest. But never wanted to be bodybuilder at that point. I wanted to race motocross, and that's my main function. But at an early age, I was exposed to how nutrition changed the way I felt and performed on the bike, which gave me interest in nutrition. But really my interest became the training because I saw what the training did to my physique, right? And of course I could wrestle my friends and beat them because I was stronger. And that's always cool when you're young. So basically raced motocross up until about, age 21, actually, a little after 21. And I started bodybuilding. But during that period of time, I always wanted to lift weights. As I went through high school, I got a little older. Everybody was getting more muscular and bigger, and they're focusing on heavy weights. But as many of you guys know, or may not know, motocross is about efficiency, being able to maintain your max heart rate for 20 minutes. So you have to be lighter, and more muscles just means more oxygen robbing tissue. You have to be agile and fast and have endurance. So that's kind of counterintuitive with weight training. So I never really got heavy into bodybuilding until later. And then after motocross, I went directly into bodybuilding. And that's when I decided I wanted to go to school to be a dietitian. And right before I kind of ended motocross, I worked at the gym as a personal trainer. And there was a dietitian on staff that made us run through his program. And he taught me about nutrition on a level of fat loss. And he actually was a bodybuilder at one point, and carb cycling. And he carb cycled me, and I got really lean, and I performed awesome on the bike racing my last year. So during that time, I was going to school, being a personal trainer and racing. And I stopped racing, and I continued to go to school, but I changed my major to nutrition because I realized nutrition's more, there's more, actually it's not more depth to it, but it was more of an interest to me because I could help a greater, broader people, right? And just generally helping people in the gym at a general population level wasn't as exciting to me, but nutrition was. So that's why I first started becoming a dietitian. I bodybuilded all through college, and that's kind of how it kind of set my path. But it was all started from that trainer getting me excited into training and nutrition, which kind of brought me into that whole realm, so to speak.
Yeah, what was the like the transition? Like, what made you stop motocross and then go to bodybuilding?
Well, I don't know for the listeners out there who don't know motocross, I mean, you're looking at breaking almost a bone a year.
Yeah.
So I had 9 bones, something like 9 bones that broke. I've had 4 or 5 concussions, tons of stitches, and it beats the living hell out of your body.
Right.
So when I was 21, it's like I'm spending $30,000 a year racing, spending every single penny I was making. It just wasn't feasible. I had to grow up, you know?
Yeah.
I had to start spending the money racing because, you know, you're racing every weekend for almost 32 weeks of the year, and all the, you know, the travel, the gas, the parts break, the bikes are about $6,000 each. So it was a lot of money and a lot of sacrifice and time. And it's not like I keep doing that forever. And plus my body really hurt. And at some point I reached the professional level racing motocross, and that's just a whole nother level, you know? And many people don't realize that, you know, like you might know a professional baseball player, but never hear his name. But that professional baseball player is an extraordinary athlete. So, and everybody knows the top athletes of any sport because those are the pinnacle of best people in the world. So when I started racing at a professional level, you know, at that point, it's not like I'm going to be making money from racing. And I was already considered old. 21 as a professional was probably fairly old at that point if I wasn't winning. Yeah. Most guys, you know, they're like 18, 19, 20, the top guys, and they're killing it in that race. Or they're already 25, 26, and they're already been on the top 5 forever, you know?
Right.
So I had to grow up, and I wanted to bodybuild anyway and move on to something because I've been racing for so long. I'm trying to find something new. And that's why I did my first show in 2005. And that's when I got addicted. I was like, wow. My thing is, my intention was just to try it, see if I like it. I wasn't being like, I'm going to be a pro. I want to do this. I just wanted to try it. I just wanted to be shredded. I wanted to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger on stage. I wanted to have that look. And once I did it and I realized it's not something that you just go do and then a month later go change it again and do it again. It's more like, all right, a year of training, come back, do it again. Year of training, come back, do it again. It's a long term. And I personally thought it was more feasible to going to school and living, because if I can only compete twice a year and then the rest of the year I just eat, train, and go to school and work, that's perfect, right?
Yeah.
Where racing was the opposite. It's like it takes up all your time, you know?
Yeah. And I think you probably looked at it, you know, this happened to me too. I was much younger and I wasn't like that good, but I skateboarded, and I just, I broke a bone in my foot, was out for 2 months, healed, and then I dislocated my knee on a handrail, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I just, the risk reward, like I enjoyed it a lot. You know, I always had a dream of going pro, you know, a lot of kids do, but it's just the actual, like, I remember thinking, I'm like 13 years old, like I can't be having this many broken bones. Like this isn't, you know, having that kind of like snapped reality of it. And that's kind of where I found lifting.
Well, it's good that you learned at a young age. I didn't learn that till way later.
Right. Well, you were probably much better than I was, you know, at motocross than I was at skateboarding. So
I had the mentality of, I broke my bone. I look at my wrist. I'm like, damn it, it's broken again. And I'd run to my parents like, Mom, my wrist is broken again. And they'd take me off. But it was funny, the feeling that you had when you quit, same feeling I had when I took a couple hard falls when I was 20. I didn't break anything, but I bruised my ribs pretty bad. And I broke my ribs before, but I hit the ground really hard. I remember one particular crash. I got up, you know, my head was bruised, I had a concussion, and I said to myself, oh, that was awful. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this again.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's kind of like where before I would fall like that, I'd get up and I wouldn't even second guess.
Yeah.
But the second you start second guessing something in an extreme sport like we were doing, it's time to stop, because that's when you're really going to get injured.
It's funny because I remember watching Evan say that in a video. He was like, the day I stopped doing this is when it becomes like a job and I don't enjoy doing it for the process.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
And I think, yeah, definitely. That's cool. Well, it seems like you had like really good guidance from an early age. I feel like a lot of people don't have that. I mean, did you have any like, did you do anything, like any preps where they were just terrible, like, ill-advised, and you just had a bad experience? Or was it like you always had that good guidance and the preps generally went smooth because of that?
Well, I will tell you, I think I'm lucky in the sense that my parents were supportive. And, like, just to give a kind of a glimpse, when I started racing, I wanted to quit because I wasn't good after 2 races. And my dad looked at me and he goes, don't you ever quit something because it's hard. Quit something because you don't want to do it. And he looked at me and goes, do you want to do this? And I go, shit, I do want to do this. And he goes, all right. So he walked around the track and found somebody that was decent at training. There was a trainer, and he hired somebody. So as a young age, I knew it was okay to ask for help. Well, a lot of people don't do that, right? So the second I went into bodybuilding, I immediately reached out to somebody that I knew who competed, and I immediately asked them, what do I need to do? Instead of lollygagging around and trying to read and figure it out myself, I want somebody who's done it to let me know what I need to do so I don't I don't make all these mistakes, right?
Yeah.
My first coach, it wasn't the greatest experience. I mean, it wasn't like, perfect, but he did put me in the right direction. And, I did get in shape. I didn't do very well my first show. And that was kind of like the start of it, because I really didn't know anything. I didn't know anything. You read 100 different things online, right?
Yeah.
And then he tells me to do this, and I'm like, I'm just going to listen to him and stay with that, and then run it. And once I did, after the first show, I actually picked up all Chris Aceto's books, and I read Chris Aceto's books, and I applied those principles and did my own show, my own prep the following year, and I won. And I actually put on 13 pounds of stage weight. So that is kind of how it first started. Worked with somebody, got my feet wet, did my own prep for 1-2 shows, did really well. Did my own prep for my 4th show, did really bad. And then at that point, I'm like, more impatience. And I'm like, I need to find somebody else who's really good, knows what they're doing. So I found Fakhri Mubarak. Okay. And I approached him. And coaching wasn't even really a big thing then. It was kind of like hush-hush behind the scenes kind of stuff. Yeah. It wasn't like broadcasting, because there was no Facebook, there was no Instagram. And I asked him to help me, and he initially said no. He goes, I don't really do that. And then he contacted my girlfriend at the time, who had MySpace, and said he'd be willing to take me on, for this amount of money. And I said, done. And I'm like, all right, what do we need to do? And then I couldn't believe the stuff he had me doing. I couldn't believe I had to eat that much
I've heard
food.
his protocols are kind of crazy, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, back then it wasn't that crazy. I've always been a relatively intelligent person in the sense that if there's something that I'm not comfortable with, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
So I just followed the food, and the gear wasn't a lot by any means.
Oh, okay.
At that point, I mean, dude, this is going back to 2007.
Okay, that's like maybe when I started lifting weights.
Right. It's like 2007. Yeah. So he's the first one to introduce me, and then I came back and I crushed it when he helped me. I put on a good amount of weight in a short period of time and came in awesome condition, and kind of exposed me to a whole other area that I didn't think would be possible.
Right.
Many times, when you get into something and you guys are listening, you'll have a perception of how something's supposed to be, and then you're stuck inside that box. This is your box, and you can't leave the box. So somebody breaks that box and shows you how much more you can do. That's kind of what happened. I was in this box that I've perceived myself from what I've read and my experience while I was competing. And then Fakhri just crushed that box and goes, no, there's much more to this that you can do, meaning with diet, training, nutrition, supplementation, all that. And he made my eyes a little more open. At that point, I realized that there's not one way of doing something. There's 100 ways of doing something.
Right.
And you just kind of have to follow things more methodically and progressive over time.
So do you think he exposed you to your capabilities or information as well, or like a little bit of both? Or
I'm just information. I'm a very observant person, and believe it or not, I never ask questions. Like some people always say, I like to go work with a coach so I can learn, and they ask questions. I don't think I asked Fakhri one damn question. I just followed it, and I saw what he was doing. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like you send him pictures, He goes, great, no changes. I'm not going to ask why no changes. I assume no changes because things are working great, right?
Right.
Kind of that common sense.
Yeah.
Versus like if he starts stepping things up dramatically, then obviously I'm not progressing.
Yeah, or
so
maybe behind a little bit.
Right, but I was kind of looking at the changes he was making very carefully and closely and kind of making sense of it. Oh, his changes are gradual. It's not 500 carbs to 100. It's gradual, you know?
Right.
And back then, cheat meals weren't a thing. You know, a lot of things today, people, all you guys listening here,
by cheat meal.
Cheat meal, refeed meal, that wasn't a thing in prep at all ever. I know John Meadows talked about that too. It's like I went through a 16-week prep and didn't have one thing off plan and no cheat meals at all. It just wasn't a thing, you know?
Right. I find personally, I like that mentality. Like I don't feel like I'm making progress. It's a weird mentality, but I like to be zoned in. Like I don't like to have things off the plan. You know?
Yeah, I don't either. Even with my own clients, dude, like the clients that I give cheat meals are usually given cheat meals for only two reasons. One, they're dangerously flat for some reason, stress, work, not sleeping, and I have to give them something like a large bolus of calories, or they would mentally break down if they didn't have something off plan, because some people are like that. But most of the time, I like to have more of a methodical, high carbohydrate refeed day where you can measure and control what you're doing versus like, oh, you had a burger at Robin last week, but this week you had a burger at Five Guys. You know what I mean?
Inconsistent. You can't, you can't gauge off that. Yeah. And then obviously the thing people don't talk about is like the digestion too. If you eat something that messes up your digestion for like 2 days, I feel like you're just taking a large step backwards. You've lost those 2 days. I mean, not necessarily, but right. I feel the same way. Yeah, that's crazy. Well, that's cool. It's a cool background. I mean, I'm kind of the same way. Like I have all my emails saved with all my coaches. I have like my WhatsApp data saved, and I just go back and refer to that. And I'm kind of in the same boat now where I kind of want to try my own thing. But yeah, that's really cool that you're kind of data driven as far as that goes, or at least observant to where you create your own data.
Yeah, I never saved it because I understood that every prep is different.
Yeah.
But I've learned things over the years. And I think some of the things I've learned that are really good key principles with preparation is never compare two preps. Never look at previous contest preparation progression pictures in another prep. Yeah. Because it fuck with you.
Oh my God, I did that. Quarantine time. Oh my God, it messed up my head so bad.
I was way leaner. Oh my God, I'm not as big. But it's like, I tell people, like, why don't you do that? Because it doesn't help you.
No.
And heaven forbid, if it causes a negative response, now you're going backwards.
Yeah. Especially your mental state. Right.
Correct. Right.
Yeah. I think I was comparing a photo when I was like flat during this current prep to one where I was like, I don't know, it was just like I was much smaller, right? And I was just like, oh my God, I'm the same size. I haven't made any progress. And I just totally messed in my head.
And plus there's so many variables, the lighting, where you were in a day, everything.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. My tan, everything like that. Yeah. Here, I got to close my window real quick. I don't want. 1 sec. All right, sorry about that. Cool. All right. Well, let me get into some of these questions I wrote down for you. Actually, so I was watching Fuad's podcast, and it's funny because it was right after the North Americans, and North Americans just happened this past weekend, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. I actually wanted to, I mean, you had, how many athletes compete in the North Americans?
I just had 3.
Oh, okay. Just 3.
Yeah, 3.
Yeah. That's cool.
Last year I had more, and the year before. I've actually been scaling back on how many clients I have per show.
Okay.
I just don't want to have 7, 10 per show. Like, I don't want that stress. I just don't.
Definitely. And it's hard to probably focus on them and give them the attention they need, right?
Yeah.
Manage all the variables.
Yeah, right. I mean, I've always been able to do it successfully, but it's not a fun process for me.
Yeah.
And I want to keep it more of like, oh, I love helping people do their thing, and that's it, versus like not sleeping at all for 3 days, you know?
Yeah. I think not a lot, but I would say that there are some coaches that just take on way too many clients for that reason. And they just want to, get as much money as they can. That's good that you do that. And you kind of are like, all right, this is my limit, it's not.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Cool. I refer them out. I have a few people I refer people to. So that's what I usually do.
That's really cool. And so I noticed you had one client who looked really good, who got his pro card.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to ask you about that, if you don't mind. His you said he took no diuretics, and you guys kind of had to play around with his water and things like that. That's a different scenario from a lot of what bodybuilding coaches do. I think a lot of coaches, I think coaches are stepping away. I like John Meadows definitely, and people like that. But where did you get the idea to step away and not use diuretics? Do you not use them across the board? Is the situational thing?
It's a situational thing, one, but honestly, I try to not use diuretics almost ever.
Right.
And if I do, it'll be a small amount, like 6.25 milligrams of a hydrochlorothiazide, or maybe a third of a diazide.
Yeah.
And maybe 1 or 2 dose applications every 10 hours, starting on Friday or Saturday, depending. But if somebody's hard, grainy, and dry on Monday, and you pull and you give them a diuretic, they're probably just going to get flatter and be the same version, right?
Right.
But some people are different. Like, I don't think personally I'm a good diuretic user either, because how many times do you hear people say, oh, dude, Saturday night I was awesome, or Sunday morning I was awesome? It's because you had hydration. Most people are like, oh, it's because I ate a burger. No, the burger slammed a bunch of salt back in your body, and you actually probably had like 32 ounces of Diet Coke or water, and now your water, because you're so dehydrated and ingesting that salt's going to be pulled into the blood. Your blood volume will increase, appearing larger for muscles. So with Nathan specifically, I've worked with him for years, and we've done shows. We used diuretics, and we haven't used diuretics.
Right.
And we've cut water in the past, but it's situational in the sense of when we were progressing through the week, because he had to make like an 8-pound weight cut, right?
He's light heavies, or
he was a middleweight.
Middleweight.
And we were a bit overweight, and we had to cut and dehydrate him hard and not eat. So as I'm methodically watching his body weight go down daily starting Sunday, because we're dehydrating a little less water, reduce the sodium a little bit, then we stopped eating, and then we just did rice cakes to give him some substance to eat until he made weight. Right. But as I'm reintroducing water after he made weight, I gave him, I think, 2.5 liters right after he made weight within a 4 or 6 hour period of time. And then sending pictures, and you can see that, he's flat, but he's a little smooth because, the body's trying to have that fluid balance normalization. So the next morning I take a look at him, and I'm like, I go, he's dry now, but now he's a little fuller, but still flat. And I kept the carbs around 60 grams of carbs per meal, 60, I believe it was 60 at that point, and kept the carbs very consistent, the salt very consistent. And I just brought his water up the next day, I believe, to 3.5 liters. 3.5 liters, his weight from check-in day to the following evening, as in the 2 times. So after the 2.5 liters, his weight, after 3.5 liters the following day, his weight was the same, which means he's still dehydrating, right? Because if he rehydrate after making weight, his weight should spike high. Right. But it didn't. So I gave him a little bit more carbs the following day, and I increased his water again, I think, to 4.5 liters. And then again, his weight started to go up, but not very much. So like evening weight was only like 1.5 pounds above what his weight was after making weight, which is not great, right?
Yeah.
He's dry. He was dry, and he wasn't popping crazy full, which still tells me hydration-wise, his body's not fully hydrated, and the sodium probably is still kind of low for his body.
Right.
So come Thursday, I start pulling water back just a tiny bit, right? I'm like, why don't we just do 3.5 liters, just a tiny bit, and watch his weight? Because I figured his weight was all of a sudden going to spike. Because at that point, your body's reaching homeostasis, that's normalizing, and then the weight can actually start to have a rebound, because that rebound's coming eventually in most cases. So Thursday night, he looked full. He was popping more on about 500 mLs less water, 1,000 mLs less water, and he was popping more. So I'm like, oh, that water cut was good. However, Friday morning he gets up, and he's really, really dry, and he doesn't have much pop. We've been eating for 3 days.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's a carb issue. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I really think that I want him to be a little drier and even still a little fuller. And I said to him, I go, what did I say? I think it was midday. I go, we're going to do only 3 liters today and cut off by a certain time, keep the sodium the same. And I think later in the day I said, hey, I just want to be on the same page because I want you to feel comfortable with our move. What do you think about possibly drinking more water tomorrow and adding more salt?
Yeah.
And he goes, I've always wanted to do something like that, but I've been brave enough to try. And I go, I think it's really going to work well. Because for you guys listening, if you think about this concept of science, when your body starts to dehydrate and there's less water, and there's no diuretics, your body will slowly start to hold on to sodium to try to keep blood volume, keep blood pressure, keep the water in.
Right.
So the body, at some degree, starts to panic and hold, but you're still excreting, so it's not like your body's in that full aldosterone release retainment of water yet. So I said, well, if you're dehydrated and your body's running low in salt, low in water, the first introduction of water and salt, provided it's not too much, it's going to suck it in, right? Like a dry sponge.
Right.
So the next morning I gave him the same exact meals, except I said double the amount of salt that you were using. And when I say double amount of salt, so if somebody's using, I don't have anybody measure their salt. I just go, you're using, how many shakes of the salt shake you're using? They go, I'm using 2. Oh, okay, 2 shakes? Okay. So we're going to do 4 shakes.
Right.
Do 4 shakes, get up, drink 500 mLs, 4 shakes that meal, and drink another 500 mLs after, and get me pictures. And then I looked at him, and I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
Because in that short 3-4 hours, his physique was changing. So I'm like, all right, do another 250 mLs between meals 2 and 3. We'll do 500 mLs of water with meal 3, another 250 after meal 3, and still keep the double salt. And every set of pictures he sent me, he was getting fuller and fuller and rounder, and his weight was going up and up and up. Yeah. And I think he ended up being on stage probably around 186, a whole 10 pounds above the middleweight cutoff. Yeah. So it ended up working perfect. But that's his body. Some people's bodies don't do that. Some people's bodies look better when they're more dehydrated. But he was just getting, the less water I gave him, he was just getting less pop, right? And his physique wasn't looking like that aliveness, he's still dry and you can do side obliques and it's grainy, but you got to be grainy and full,
Right. Yeah. And it's it shows your experience to notice that, maybe it was salt too. A lot of people are afraid of sodium or afraid of water. I've heard of coaches afraid of either or in a prep scenario. And you have one coach, salt. I've heard people salt loading. I've heard people water loading. But it seems like you're playing with these variables in a very methodical way. You up one, observe, and that process is something that I need a lot of experience on, because it's just again, you have that eye and you're able to observe it and make calculated adjustments based off of that.
And it's what you just said. It's methodical. So people are listening. Nothing drastic. It's just, this is what we're doing. This is what's starting to happen. But like you said, it's the eye and knowing that person's physique. I'm lucky I know Nate's physique. So I've seen Nate's physique change. And plus, he was sending me pictures 3 times a day, every day. So you could see kind of like at what point, at what time things were occurring.
Right.
But that's key. And I don't like drastic. And sometimes the diuretics, like you take a diuretic and you mess it up, it's like there's not really much undoing it.
Versus being, you're already in condition, right? Why, like you said, you see someone who's just looks awesome on like a Thursday before a show, and then something happens between Thursday and, Friday or Saturday, that just completely different look, right?
Yeah. I think water weird for people. And I like salt. I like adding salt back. I think adding salt back with water restriction gives you a gnarly look.
Right. Definitely. Cool. Yeah, I just wanted you to elaborate on that, because I feel like there are coaches who are just like, there's diuretic, it just goes in. It's just no matter what, So I was just kind of curious,
Never understood that.
Right.
Even working with the CETO, like, I knew the deal. So CETO never had to explain to me. I'll be like, hey, what do you want me to have on hand for diuretics? And he'd just be like, oh, whatever. He doesn't even care.
That's so funny.
And I had everything. And then I remember when the CETA was telling me to take diuretics, he goes, I want you to take 12.5 milligrams of an aldactone and 6.25 of a hydrochlorothiazide just once. And I was like, Aceto, I have 100 milligram tablets of aldactone.
How do I, yeah.
I go, he goes, just crushed up into little crumbles and just take a baby pebble. And then I did. The next morning I was dry as a bone.
That's so funny.
And he's like, see, he goes, see, if we did more, it would have been too much.
Chris is like the master of like, I don't, what is the term I'm looking for? Yeah. I mean, he, like the thing where he like touches his athletes. I've seen, I had a buddy who's a pro out here. I live in Bay Area, and he's showing me one of his protocols, and he's like asking him what he should take. And he's like, yeah, whatever. Just, he didn't care. Right. It's just so wild. Yeah. And then he has like some of the most insane looking athletes. You're just like, that's ridiculous.
He comes in my hotel room and you're pro. I'm like, me, I have everything. I'm like, all right, what do you have for carb? I'm like, what should I use for carbs? He's like, I don't know. What do you got? And I go, well, I have all these. And he goes, well, what do you normally eat? I'm like, I usually eat rice bread and white rice. He goes, well, that's what we use then.
Yeah. That's funny. He's a fun guy. That's cool.
He's awesome. It's going to be a sad day when he's not in the industry anymore.
Oh, I know. I mean, he's still got some guys up on the top ranks right now, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. What did I want to ask you about? A little bit about your clinical. So I think this is a really big thing. I feel like a lot of people, and you've said this too, is like you can't necessarily use some parts of your formal education weren't applicable when you went over to bodybuilding coaching. But I feel like that you said you did a stint in like a clinical setting. And I was just curious if that had any impact. Like, I know you were looking over lab values and there was tube feeding going on and things like that. Is there any of that you like as a coach now use or were able to take away from that? And maybe some of your education,
Okay. So I will start in the first question and work to the TPNs and blood work. So I would say in a nutshell, my whole entire education, my master's, my internship, and bachelor's degree, and everything I've learned about nutrition basically made me better able to read through the bullshit coaches, read through the crap that you hear on Instagram, the influencers posting ridiculous claims about nutrition and food. Yeah. That is kind of what it made me be able to read through, where I could look at something and be like, this guy's totally full of shit.
Right.
Like he might get people in shape, but his methodology of what he's planning with meal one has to be a grapefruit with a Splenda on it and this and that. He goes, that's just his system, but it does nothing. Do you know what I mean? Right. Where I could understand that. Kind of like Lane Norton always debunks what all these influencers post all the time. It's like, I'm totally with Lane on like, you can't make those claims, because of why, and then he explains why. So I'm in the same lines as he and a lot of that stuff. But it doesn't help me get in bodybuilding shape. It just helped me read nutrition better and know when something's crap and what's not. But to the blood work, yes, because we had to learn to read blood work all the time with TPNs, which is IV nutrition. Okay. This is nutrition broken down in its finest form. So you're hanging, it's going right into a PEC line. Not like a tube feed where it's going through your stomach. It's going right into the vein.
Okay.
So we had to read blood work daily and then adjust the electrolytes based on their blood work, because obviously you change someone's electrolytes, their sodium, potassium, the calcium, and magnesium, you can see a drastic change in 24 hours if you're way off, especially depending on what disease state they have. So that was able to, for me to read people's blood work, because bodybuilders will send me in their blood work. Like, what do you think? I'm like, dude, this is terrible. Like, you need to go do this and go see this specialist immediately and stop taking that and doing this. At least I can have them understand that. But I can also look at someone's blood work and be like, oh, that doctor doesn't really understand that liver enzymes are elevated because of tissue damage. You might want to not train for 5 days, go in hydrated and retest again, just to rule that out, because your doctor's ready to sit there and order an ultrasound.
Right.
I had a
guy I worked with last week send me his labs, and he was like, hey, he's trying to refer me to whatever a liver specialist is. And I was like, and his just slightly elevated liver enzymes. And I'm like, well, you exercise, right? Like, and it's just crazy that's not general knowledge. But go on.
I know. It's funny. It's like my father's a physician, and he knows that stuff, and he's the one that actually taught me that, and then I looked more into it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So like I was like, Dad, look at my blood work. He's like, oh yeah, it's because you have more muscle mass. That's why your creatinine is in the higher end of normal, but still normal. Right. He goes, make sure you're following trends. He goes, your liver enzymes are elevated because you're an athlete. I'm like, what do you mean I'm an athlete? He goes, muscle breakdown. And then he knew that, and he just said to me too, he goes, younger doctors, some doctors just don't know. It's not like the doctor's an idiot. They just don't know. They weren't taught the physiological responses to heavy weight training, and being a doctor, because that's not really the general population.
Right. And just as they're not generally taught nutrition either. I mean, they maybe get one course, right?
Definitely. Yeah. That's what my dad said. He took one course.
Yeah. So I find that funny because people will be like, well, my doctor said eat this. And I'm like, how much formal nutrition training did your doctor get? You know what I mean? Like, please. Your
doctor's recommending the ketogenic diet. Oh boy.
Yeah, exactly. That's funny. Cool. I was going to say, I mean, even that electrolyte thing, you probably have had some point in like a prep or you're doing a peak week and that something like that may pop up in your head. I mean, I can only assume that it does, but.
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing I think what's helped me with nutrition is being able to manipulate someone's labs through nutrition. I get hired a lot for people trying to make their life insurance test.
Yeah.
So, they're like, hey, my cholesterol's a little off. My liver enzymes are this, or, my BUN's a little elevated. Like I need my labs to be perfect for my life insurance policy, and I'll get their labs perfect with nutrition. Like I know little tricks that you can do to make sure your BUN and your creatinine is normal. I know tricks you can do for your liver enzymes and things like that, avoiding red meat. If you eat a bunch of red meat the day before a blood lab draw the next morning, you can have falsely elevated creatinine levels. You can.
Okay.
So like avoiding red meat, especially the night before, is important. Staying extra hydrated, being very consistent with salt intake, because those can kind of make your levels a little off or a bit of false,
Yeah. That's such a cool thing for myself, is just having that power to manipulate those things and control your health. Like that's just the coolest thing to me, like to be able to look over labs. All right, I got to do this, this, and this now, and then work on it, try to get those values in range. I mean, that's such a cool, for me at least. I guess.
Versus just like trying to do a drug.
Yeah.
Let me fix it with this. Let me take this supplement, do this. No.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of, what was that?
Let's just look at your diet.
Right. Well, I think a lot of bodybuilding is that it's, we are at high level of bodybuilding. You are mitigating side effects, and you are trying to, I think, Stan Efferding is someone who said this, is if you want to be healthy, don't compete. Right. And I feel like a lot of like higher level bodybuilding is you are managing side effects and watching certain blood markers and trying to keep those in range. And you're trying to find this formula that works, eat this food, not that. And then, trying to, I guess with general nutrition too, but.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Cool. So to get into that a little bit, further into nutrition, where do you think the importance of micro, and I don't want to be too redundant. I knew the fool had asked you some of these questions, but where do you think the importance of micronutrition in a diet lies? I think, a lot of bodybuilders get caught up in this where they eat just chicken and rice. But I think it may be even more important in a prep environment. So I guess that's kind of a twofold question, but, micronutrients, and then maybe why they might be more important in a prep versus less.
So in the off season, it's less worrisome about micronutrients. Not that it's ever not worrisome, meaning like you can't discount it, but it's less because when you're eating large quantities of food, you're obviously getting a larger amount of micronutrients just by dose dependent. Hold on.
No worries.
You just keep barking the whole time.
Those are your small dogs.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're eating a large quantity of food throughout the whole off season and you're eating off plan here and there, you obviously are getting a larger quantity of micronutrients just because of dose dependence, right? But as you restrict calories of, say, micronutrient dense list foods or foods that are not considered micronutrient dense, and eating less and less and less, your chance of becoming a deficit in any one of those vitamins and minerals greatly increases, right? Not to mention your calorie expenditure greatly increases because now you're doing cardio, now you're training extra hard, And now you're expecting your body to perform optimally, lose fat, and usually in a compromised state of sleep, because majority of people don't sleep well in prep.
Right.
You know, stimulants, stress, hunger, etc. So you combine an environment of less sleep, pushing your body to the max with cardio training with less calories. It's to kind of like 2 + 2 is 4. You're going to be deficient, you know, especially eating the basic chicken, rice, cream of rice foods. Now, I can't say as an individual, this is fact. I just know this from my own anecdotal evidence for myself and my clients, that when I focused on foods that are very micronutrient dense during prep and really ate a sufficient amount of those vegetables and paid very close attention, I felt 100 times better, as in less muscle soreness. I slept better. I burned fat a heck of a lot better because I was able to do way less cardio, way less fat burning drugs.
Right.
I felt results were just, my physique just looked overall balanced. I just felt great. I didn't have like days where I was like, oh, I feel like death, because I've been there before. I've been to that diet of chicken, rice, fish, eating the same vegetable 3 times a day, not worrying about a variety of vegetables, not eating any fruits. This last prep I did, I had fruits constantly. I had maybe 3 or 4 fruit servings a day. Right. I had vegetables. I had all sorts of that. And the carbohydrates that really changed were the micronutrient denseless ones, like rice. Doesn't give anything of energy. So when carbs got low, rice was the one that got cut, not fruit.
Yeah. Not
other things, you know?
Right.
And I mean, people argue all they want. I was the best condition I've probably ever been in my life a week out. And then for that animal shoot, I was doing like 20 minutes of cardio. I never even used T3, and I used like 40 micrograms of climb only. And I was just getting grainier and harder all the time. I felt awesome.
Right.
You know, is it the micronutrient density foods that did that? No, it's a combination of everything. But one thing I did do totally different that time around is I slept way better, and my diet was completely focused on micronutrients. I had mushrooms, carrots, spinach, zucchini. I had beet juice in the morning, pure cranberry juice in the morning. I had blueberries. I had oranges, citrus fruits, and that was it. And the salmon, steak sometimes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, even the cranberry juice, you're replacing your iodine, your thyroid's functioning better. You're not having to lower your calories. You don't have as much cardio. All these, it's like you're working with your body, not against it, right? Like everybody's always fighting their body.
Correct. Right. 100%. There's a big difference between forcing your body to do something, which doesn't always work well, and it sure doesn't feel good.
Right. Oh no, most definitely. So I wasn't as stubborn. I think a lot of people are more stubborn and they'll go through the preps, but I had one that was just, I looked pretty good. I was really sucked down though. And I just couldn't stand up. It was just a tilapia, broccoli, chicken diet. I was having trouble standing up. You know, there's one of those where you're laying in bed and you're like, all right, I got to go pee. And you're like trying to psych yourself up to do it. And the fatigue was it just didn't feel right. You know, it felt like, and I know bodybuilding is an unnatural state, but, and I can say anecdotally, when I switched to those different food choices, again, myself too, is it just feels like you're not fighting as much and things, you know, if you can sleep correctly, you're giving your body what it needs to recover and to be able to do this versus taking those things away that are essential for the process. If that makes sense.
And people don't understand that, like, a lot of the vitamins and minerals and everything that uses for your whole body's system, like all the processes in your body of utilizing those nutrients for energy and for repair and reduce inflammation. When you have high inflammation, you're not having those cofactors help you break down the food, your body just doesn't work as well. Right. And, you know, I hate when people just go, oh, that's why I took a multivitamin. Oh, doesn't work the same, dude.
No.
Studies in my whole thesis and all the studies I've done, my reviewed in my master's class talking about vitamins and minerals. Well, this is interesting. This is obviously, you can research this. This is kind of not new. Where people who have cancer, who ate a wide variety of fruits and vegetables, had a lower mortality and morbidity rate than the opposite people who just took supplements. And the ones who just took multivitamins and mineral supplements, and did not have the same variety of fruits and vegetables had a much higher increase in mortality morbidity rate than the group that ate fruits and vegetables and had any supplements. So like there's something synergistic about food. They don't know why, but there's something synergistic about food and that it works, that it's better for you than a supplement. A supplement's to remedy deficiency. It's not to replace your broccoli.
Right, most definitely. And I think I've heard that about calcium. There was a study with calcium where the supplement increased all-cause mortality versus consuming from food lowered all-cause mortality. I don't know. I never looked at the paper.
Yeah, because it probably hardens the, you can get calcium buildup and
yeah, definitely. And and I think there's, like you said, there's certain coenzymes, cofactors that help us to be able to utilize the nutrients in those foods. Like when people talk like B12 supplements being like really not well digested, or you only get a certain amount. I can only imagine. I'm not speaking from.
No, for sure. That's why your pee's like neon yellow. It's like you can't absorb all those B vitamins all at once.
Right.
And you just said it too. It's like, and this is the most common response to something I get asked. Hey, Chris, do you think I should take calcium? I don't know. Do you have osteoporosis in your family? Do you have low blood calcium level? Does your diet deficient in calcium?
Right.
And usually all of their answers are no.
Right.
Like, don't just take a supplement just to take a supplement. Like make sure if you want to take a basic multi once per day, that's very basic, meaning it has like maybe 100% of the RDA. Sure. Don't take a supplement that has 10,000% of the RDA and load up on super physiological doses of vitamins and minerals thinking it's going to do you good. It's probably going to do harm in the long run. Right.
Most definitely. Yeah. I like that approach. It's like, that's kind of how I like to look at things, is like observe a need for something like that. Right. And then too, always look at this is, kind of backwards, but I always say, always look at your diet first, and I think you're the same way. Right.
Yeah. Sometimes people, unfortunately, how people are, they like convenience and they're like, oh, I don't want to do that for this, or I don't want to eat that. I'm like, well, then you might want to consider taking a vitamin D calcium supplement.
Yeah. It's like get them to do what they can or what they want to.
Correct.
That's cool. All right. Well, and then I wanted to go on. I kind of know how you're going to answer this, but I think some people need to hear it. Carbohydrates, are they the reason why we're all, America as a whole is obese, or not? There's a large percentage of obesity and obesity related diseases, or are they good or bad for us? What's your take on carbohydrates?
Are carbohydrates itself the reason why America's overweight? I'm going to say no, and I'm going to say it's because it's just plain and simple the overconsumption of calories total, of course.
Yep.
However, sugar, more and more research has come out, sugar is horrendous for you.
Okay.
People who have high intakes of sugar are associated with the increased risk of dementia and Alzheimer's later in life. So like they're finding that sugar is toxic to the brain. Carbohydrates are like they do cause inflammation. If you're eating a very high refined sugar diet, carbohydrate diet, and you're in excess calories, probably not getting a lot of micronutrients, you're living a very inflammatory diet. They used to demonize protein and saturated fat, and they realized that was all political propaganda crap, which is unfortunate because now we're figuring out now how corrupt those recommendations were. No wonder people don't trust the USDA and the recommendations because they keep changing them all the time, right? But I do believe the vast majority of people are probably over-consuming carbohydrates. And I do believe that if you're a general population person, I do believe that your carbohydrate intake should not be very high. I think it should be around 45 to 50% max of your total intake.
Right.
In some cases, maybe even lower. I think fat should come from healthy sources, and I think people should actually eat a decent amount of protein. I know a recent study came out. I'm not going to spit out stats, but it basically was saying that debunking the myth that people consume too much protein overall in the United States, that's actually untrue. Yeah. A large percent of people are still under the RDA per day on average.
Right.
For protein intake. I know my mom is almost every day. Muffin for breakfast, goes out for lunch, grilled cheese. You know what I mean? And it's
and then
for dinner it's pasta.
I can say anecdotally, I work at a restaurant, and it's kind of a health food restaurant. And I always ask, did you want protein with your dish? And I mean, like at least 80% of the people say no. There's enough protein in that, and it's like potatoes or like hemp seeds. And I'm like, yeah, all right. I mean, you're getting like 3 grams in this meal. You know that, right? Like, or maybe 5. I don't know. So, and that's my anecdotal experience. So I agree with that as on an anecdotal level that people don't eat enough protein.
No, they don't. And it's unfortunate that so much of the nutrition recommendations, Netflix specials, it's
oh my gosh,
so politically biased.
Yeah.
And I wish people in school had to take a course on what confirmation bias is, what bias is,
right.
And how to read and understand it, because I honestly don't know how people can watch some of the things they watch and not directly see how horrible it is. Right.
Right.
It's like, I don't know where you are in political scheme. And so I might be more one way, but I can easily look at both news stations and both see the bias.
Right.
I'm not looking at my news station and be like, no, that's fact, 100%. They're totally wrong. It's like, I can see they're both full of shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
I can totally see the spin things are put on. And I think that's something that people would benefit the most in life on just about anything when it comes to reading articles, magazines about nutrition, about cars, that there's a level of bias in almost everything. Now, when bias comes to level where people skew results to reach their narrative, that's a problem, because now you're portraying information to the public that's based on fact when it's actually based on preference.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah, that happens a lot, right?
Happens, especially now, man, with social media. It happens a real lot.
Right. I mean, I think a big thing, no, but it's funny because we do, I remember in high school, having to create references for, any of our projects, even like my English class. And it's like, I don't know, I feel like some people just took nothing from that. It's just like, okay, you need to make sure you're getting it from a credible source. Wikipedia isn't, this news outlet isn't, and they would make sure we get, and it's like, I feel like people have forgot that, and they would much rather watch, a What the Health and be like, all right, yep, that's it. That's, everything in there is correct.
That's it.
Right. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe is there some sources? Can we check where they got the information
it goes
from?
to show how persuasive the general population is and how easily people can be swayed one way or another. And how you do that is you attach emotion to it.
Yes.
So if you're a vegan, you show animals being slaughtered. That's going to make people feel uneasy.
Right.
And then you start showing them some facts about how healthy vegetables are, and then you deliver your message. You attach the emotion to some fact, and then you get your message, and then people are convinced. Right.
You pick the research that isn't from a meta-analysis. It's one study with a sample size of 2 people.
Observational studies. Oh my Lord.
Right. Exactly.
That's the worst. But about the bias, like what you just said, is when I was in an internship, we had to write this massive paper. And she gave us 50 studies. We had each had a topic. There's a group of 4 of us, and we each had a topic assigned to the group. I think ours was like carbohydrate intake and prevalence of diabetes or something. And we each had 50 studies for our group. And she goes, you have the end of the week to figure out which studies can actually be used for a paper and tell us which ones are not and why. So obviously we go back, we're looking at p-values, we're looking at subject, we're looking at size, if it's a randomized controlled trial, double blind, and we're feeding all the good ones. We're like, all right, these 20 are great, these are crap. And then we go back and she goes, every single one of them is garbage. And we're like, what? And then she starts to break it down, and then you're like, didn't see that, didn't see that.
It's just one little thing that you missed.
Yeah, and then one of them was like real sneaky. So at the end, a lot of times it will say, this was funded by or not funded, because if it's funded by something that's directly related to what they're studying, it can be considered biased, because obviously if I'm giving you a product to study, I'm telling you Teddy's peanut butter is best peanut butter, and I'm from Teddy's and I'm funding the study, obviously. So one of the studies was not funded by the food company or supplement that was being used, but it was funded by somebody who was a part owner of the stock, of their stocks or share, right? So it's like,
That's really scary. Yeah.
You do have to do research on a research paper. You have to do
Right.
a lot of research on a research paper.
Right. Yeah. Like, I mean, that's another thing though. If you look at like, I'll see some people repost things on like Instagram sometimes, and then you just go to look who wrote the paper and you're like, okay, well, obviously like this is not credible at all. Like it just takes a couple of clicks to be able to find out who wrote it. You know what I mean? And it's not very much effort, but you know, it's crazy.
It's sad. It's sad because now in today's world, there's too much information. I mean, there used to be a lot of information, but we had to sift through what was available, and it was easier to find more valid. And then now, because of social media, it's created too much information, but now 80% of the information is incorrect.
Right. And anybody can be an influencer. Anybody can put information out there. And generally speaking, the more sexy recommendations are going to get the most likes, the most follows, the most people looking at them, versus you're over here, you know, Chris is over here. Oh, you just need to eat. So how do I lose weight? Oh, you just need to eat in a calorie deficit and exercise with weights. And then someone over here is like, well, I got this, you know, incredible 5 times, you know, you'll burn five times as much fat doing the ketogenic diet. You know, who are they going to listen to? Most people are going to draw into this guy over here, not someone saying that.
You can have the most qualified nutrition professional on one side recommend something very methodical and precise, a nutrition plan. Then you have Kim Kardashian talk about this off-the-wall weight loss, and you have millions of people buy her product and believe her over the guy who's got 20 years of experience and qualifications.
Right. Yeah.
That's why we're in trouble. That's why we're in trouble.
Really, it really is. Definitely. I mean, I think people like you are a part of that, you know, educating people, at least in your community and the people you coach. And that's what you can do, right? It's you have a good following. You have people that will listen to you. So, you know, there's only so much you can do. You can't help people.
Correct. And that being said, there is. People are only going to learn if they're perceptive to learning. I don't preach. I don't go out and comment on other people's pages. I don't have time for that. You know, I focus on what I can and help people who are willing to listen, who want to change. And that's really all you can do. You can't go out and change. In other words, if I like eating meat, I'm never going to change somebody who doesn't like eating meat to eat meat, right? They're going to have to make a decision themselves, or vice versa, you know?
You can present them with all the evidence, but if they don't want to do it, then they don't want to do it, right? I agree.
Correct.
Cool. Okay. Let me get into some other questions. I don't want to keep you too long. Okay. So I've heard a couple coaches talk about this. I have done some personal experiments with this, but okay, wait, sorry. Before I go on to that, with the carbohydrate thing, I know we kind of went off on a tangent, but is that sugar when calories are controlled, or is it when people are eating in a surplus with sugar that they're getting these poor outcomes?
Well, actually, I listened to a podcast. There's actually a copy of a conference of doctors talk about the effects of sugar in the brain, the sugar in the internal systems, that if you control for body weight and the consumption of sugar is greater than, I don't remember what it was, I wish I do, it was greater than a certain percent of your total calories per day, your risk of these diseases are still the same. Okay. So in other words, like even if you're in shape and you're fit and you run all the time, but you consume, say, 200 grams a day of confined sugar, you're still at higher risk for health outcomes than somebody who's sedentary doing the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, I guess so. And then if you're looking at that, if calories are controlled and they're, you know, maybe isocaloric, eating 200 grams of sugar, most people aren't going to get the micros they need with that large amount of calories taken up their diet, right?
Let me rephrase. The study in which they were referring to was long-term effects of dementia, Alzheimer's, heart disease, talking 50 years, 40 years down the line, not talking about short outcome. When you control for calories, even if your calories are made of predominantly carbohydrates, most everybody will see a reduction in lipids. When you're in a calorie deficit, no matter what the breakdown is going to be, you're going to have a reduction in body fat. You're going to have lower blood pressure. You're going to have lower cholesterol. You're going to improve your blood markers. There's no question when you control for calories. But like if you're in excess calories, you know, that could potentially be something else. But that's just what the data supports now. And just so what people understand is just because data supports something doesn't mean it's fact. That just means at this point in time, that's what the information seems to suggest.
Right.
And for those of you guys listening, it doesn't mean, I give you a box of Pop-Tarts or 0 Pop-Tarts. Maybe just have 1 Pop-Tart, right? Like be cautious, be moderate, and have a balance.
Right. Most definitely. I think that's the great thing to preach, right? It's not.
Yeah, man. Everybody's so concerned about black and white answers,
right.
Or principles. Doesn't quite work that way, Yeah,
most definitely. Cool. Well, I'm glad you elaborated on that. I want to look more into that too, because I'm someone who looked into a lot of Lane stuff, and he talks about health outcomes improving when calories are controlled and a lot of that. But I would like to see some of that, because I've heard some people saying that too about sugar. So
if you go on YouTube and you type in, I think it's California sugar study, in YouTube. I know it was in California, and it was a doctor's conference talking about the outcomes of sugar in long term. That's where I listened to it. It's like a 2-hour conference, and check that out.
Okay. Yeah, I will. Definitely. Cool. Well, so on the topic of carbohydrates in bodybuilding, do you think I've heard a lot of coaches using metformin. Do you think metformin has a place, say a bodybuilder is eating, 500 plus grams of carbohydrates a day, or maybe something like an exogenous insulin?
Metformin, I'm going to say no. I've personally used it once. I didn't notice anything.
Right.
I've had clients use it. They didn't report anything. I've had clients be prescribed it for insulin sensitivity, and it helped them lose body fat during a dieting phase. Something like PCOS, something like that. Polycystic ovary syndrome, for those who don't know what that is. But insulin, I would say yes, but I do believe insulin's overplayed, meaning people think that insulin's this magic thing, just like growth's this magic thing. Let's be honest. For all you guys listening who haven't used performance-enhancing drugs, or who have, it's always the drug that you haven't used that you think's the magical one.
Yeah.
That's like across the board.
It's gonna change the game, right?
Yeah, nothing changes the game.
No.
So insulin, in my opinion, for most people, just gets them fat. Yeah. Because they think that, oh my God, I'm going to take insulin, I'm going to take growth, I'm going to take testosterone, I'm going to get huge. And they just get super fat. They get to a body weight of 270 and they die all the way down to like 4 pounds heavier above their last year's stage weight.
Right.
However, there are some people that seem to have a disadvantage in absorbing a certain amount of food. I've had clients use insulin before, and it was a game changer because they were eating 700 carbs a day and nothing's happening. Right. Nothing. Their insulin sensitivity, even an insulin sensitivity test was still fine. They weren't using a lot of growth, but when they added insulin in, just 5 IUs, human R, twice a day, they started putting on weight, and good weight.
Yeah,
it's like the body was able to absorb it. Those body types ended up being those very ectomorphic looking types where they're kind of lean all the time. They can eat whatever they want, and they just don't gain crazy amount of body fat. The biggest mistake is you get the people who gain body fat relatively easy, and they want to use insulin.
Yeah.
If you gain body fat relatively easy, and we're just weight in general, and you start eating more carbohydrates and getting insulin, you will get super fat, super fast.
Right.
But and then some of those protocol for insulin, I think, is just out of control. I'm not gonna say his name, but recommending 80 units of Lantus a day, 30 units human R per day, and it's just. I mean, at some point, I think some of these coaches really honestly don't give a shit about anybody's health. It's just if they die, they die, and let's just give them 3,000 milligrams a week of androgens, give them all this food, all this insulin, all this growth, and 7 out of 10 people are going to grow.
Yeah.
One person's going to die, and the other people aren't going to get any results,
Right.
So in some degree, there's a lot of that going on, even with some of these top coaches.
Right. Yeah, they will just throw everything at the wall and hope something sticks, and sometimes it does.
Yeah. Oh, sweet, something worked. Perfect.
Yeah.
You're a magician.
I can't tell you what of the 15 things I have you taking worked, but one of them did.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. And then that's one thing I think has changed a lot. When I first started bodybuilding in 2005, the drug use then was not out of control at a local level.
Right.
People were using 400 mgs a test a week, 300 mgs a dec a week, very basic dosages, and people were growing. 750 test was like a good amount. That's an experienced cycle.
Yeah.
250 every other day. And then all of a sudden I see people recently who are just like their first year of bodybuilding and they're running 800 mgs a day at trend, 800 milligrams a week of trend. I'm just like, what on earth is happening? And you look at them and they're not even 225 pounds.
Right.
It's just like, dude, they're not getting it.
But I think there's this disillusioned, thought process that's what the pros are taking. And it's funny because there are pros that are literally telling people what they are taking. And then people are like, nope, he's lying. I'm like, what incentive does he have to lie? He's already telling you that he's using hormones. Like, it's just wild to me. For sure.
I know pros personally really well that use so little that if I said that, even my own friends would laugh at me and say I'm lying.
Yeah.
But I believe them because when you have genetic freaks, it's kind of like if you're born a Ferrari, you don't need to do too much to it to make it go faster.
Right.
If you're born a Volkswagen Beetle, guys, you could do whatever you want to that. It's still going to be a Volkswagen Beetle.
Right.
And that's where I think people get the idea that like, oh, that I can be that Ferrari. It's like, no, you're never going to be that Ferrari.
Right.
No matter what, you're going to die in the process.
Right.
Some people, genetics reign supreme, man. I've had natural guys, 100% natural, win NPC shows in bodybuilding.
Yeah.
And win. And then that one of the guys who was natural just took 50 mgs of Winstrol for 6 weeks, the last 6 weeks into that show, and destroyed the whole entire show.
Yeah.
What? Genetics, you know?
Right. Most definitely. Yeah, that's I like that tangent because I think it's important that that's said. I think people are just jumping at the drugs and just thinking that's the.
And the best analogy is ever. It's like if you put 50 grand of modifications into a Honda Civic, do you think that Honda Civic's going to go 2,000 miles, 200,000 miles before it dies?
Yeah.
No, it's going to die much sooner lifespan. You know.
But it's much more morbid when you're talking about human lives. When people are like, "Oh, I'm taking a gram of Tren," you're like, there's no way there are no repercussions for that. Like, I feel like people think there aren't, you know?
Well, there's a lot more people that pass away in bodybuilding that even people know about. I mean, just last year, I heard about 3 people locally within the Northeast pass away, but it was never reported, all under the age of 35, you know? But it doesn't really, Dave Plummer doesn't know them or it doesn't get reached out, but a lot more people are dying than people think there are. And they think it's not consequence, or they just go, it's not going to happen to me, or so-and-so's doing it, so I can do it too.
Yeah.
It's madness, man.
And I hate what that does to the actual like sport, you know, because there are people who do it safely, right? And so you have these, now everybody's like, oh, bodybuilding is going to kill you and it's going to kill you young. And it's like, I mean, there's an inherent risk with that. But at the same time, there are people who are just being irresponsible. And then they're kind of, 100%. They're the people who get reported on the news. They're the people that, and it helps, and it hurts our sport as a whole, I think, as far as being public and having some, money coming to it and things like that.
Yep. Those are the people that are taking Winstrol T3 Clen and DNP, doing recreational drugs just to get ready for a cruise or a vacation.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. I know we kind of went off on a tangent, but that was really important. But I wanted to say, from my personal experience, I've used metformin. It just hurt my digestion. As far as the mechanism of action, I think that I've seen a little bit, but basically it just impedes carbohydrate absorption. I don't know if they're sure why or how that works, but as a bodybuilder, you probably don't want carbohydrate absorption to be impeded. You want to be using your carbohydrates, right? You don't want to just poop out all the rice you ate. You want it to be used for, glycogen replenishment and things like that. But I am one of those heavier bodybuilders that has used, exogenous insulin. Like, I have a slower metabolism. I just noticed when I use growth hormone that I wake up and sometimes my fasting glucose is really high. So I think a smart way to mitigate that is to keep my blood sugar at a good level. And so I have used Lantus to do that. I've experimented a little bit with it, but very, very small amounts. So I just wanted to say that.
So on top of that, generally, if you look at some of the instructions on some of the ceramic kits, the pharmacological growth, it will say administration should be done at night. And I usually assume doing it at night is because you're away from particular food. So you're not eating, you're not taking growth, which is going to give you temporary insulin resistance, and then ingesting 300 grams of carbohydrates, which will send your blood sugar super high. So I've always done it at night. And nighttime, I've never had issues with fasting blood glucose being elevated.
Okay.
But that's one way of doing it. But some people, another kind of myth is if you're taking an exogenous growth hormone and you're ingesting carbohydrates, they do not interfere with each other.
Okay.
Ingesting carbohydrates will affect your endogenous release of growth hormone. Some people
But it doesn't
are
matter because you're
right. So you're like, oh, I can't eat carbs near my growth hormone. I'm like, no. That's endogenous. If you're taking a drug, it's different.
right. Yeah, definitely. I use it. I try to use it in fasting times. I guess I'm just doing more of an experiment with it. But yeah, I think
The main reason why I changed it is because I got sick and tired of being tired and sleepy.
yeah.
So like when I would take it at the end of the day and I woke up, I would be more alert.
You sleep really well, right?
Yeah. Well, it can go both ways. You can get weird dreams where you're like,
Yeah,
you're
that too.
so sick. You're like, feels like you're in that movie Inception.
Yeah, definitely. I've gotten that too, for sure. Yeah, but and I think too, it's just I guess I was just playing off of the, there are the name that shouldn't be said, but who are saying, okay, well, we're leaving the beta cells in the pancreas, right? Because we're throwing so many carbohydrates at it, like in kind of an inorganic state, throwing 500-700. But I don't think the smart way to react to that is to throw like as much to feed the insulin, basically. Okay, well, now I'm going to add 100 grams of carbohydrates to my diet and add in 10 to 20 IUs of insulin. Like, I feel like that's what people do, and that's why they get fat, right? It's more of like, okay, I'm already eating this diet and I'm running maybe a little bit high blood sugars. Maybe to mitigate that, something like an exogenous insulin might be smart, but let's not up the calories, right? I mean, then obviously you can check your body fat, your insulin sensitivity first. You have to observe an actual need for it, right? Like if you're too fat, then most likely you just need to lose weight. You don't need to add insulin on top of it, right?
Correct. 100%. They're going overboard. They're not really addressing the problem insensitivity. They're kind of overdoing it and eating extra carbs beyond what they need to cover that insulin.
Yeah, most definitely. I think it's a lot of people do. Okay. Let's see. Blood. Do you have any? Have you ever had to deal with like larger athletes and blood pressure?
All the time. And believe it or not, it's not just older. It's more or less just genetics. I've had people under 190 pounds have blood pressure issues just because of genetics.
Right.
And honestly, the best way to go about it, the first thing to do is to address it pharmacology-wise. If this particular compound raises your blood pressure, we're going to avoid that. Obviously, common sense, right?
Yeah.
The second in line is body weight. So say if they are way overweight, body fat-wise for a bodybuilder, I would really tell them, listen, let's get down to a reasonable body fat so you're not carrying around 35 pounds of unnecessary weight on the body. And then maybe you can actually use those compounds that you can use to grow and not have that blood pressure issue. The other third one is reducing stimulants. I'll be like, how do you guys use a lot of stimulants? And like, I'm drinking Red Bulls, 5 energies. Well, let's cut that in half and let's see how you feel.
Yeah.
In my experience, 80% was due to stimulants in conjunction with everything else they're using. So they're using whatever, eating food, being how they are in the off season. And I just cut the stimulants in half to sometimes going down to almost nothing but a cup of coffee. And their blood pressure went down significantly over 3 to 4 days.
Okay.
I'm like, great. And then the last one that I do doesn't really do much, but in some cases it does, because obviously gear and growth can make you a little more sensitive to, your whole fluid balance.
Right.
So I might cut their sodium intake back slightly.
Okay.
And tell them just to drink a little bit more water. When I say a little water, I'm talking like an extra liter a day.
Yeah.
And then just to see if there's any effect. Most of the time, there's not. Most people believe that sodium, blood pressure. The majority of people that have high blood pressure in relation to increased sodium intake is not very large. There's not many. It's usually just related to genetics and then the kidneys. And then the last resort would be like a low dose of lisinopril. Go to your doctor, get the blood pressure taken care of, because I have quite a few clients on a low dose lisinopril to combat that blood pressure. I do not mess around with that. I have my clients check their blood pressure regularly, and if they are off, they're addressing it, or I'm not working with them. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
I had one client. He was telling me blood pressure and everything was fine, and he was lying to me. His blood pressure was really high. So I noticed that he looked puffier than normal. Like, man, you look like you're very swollen. He's like, I don't know what it is. Like, my legs are pooling with fluid, look a little swollen.
Oh no.
I'm like, dude, you need to get blood work. Let's get some lab work done. All right, well, why? I'm like, well, something's off, dude. Like, I'm changing things and something's off.
Yeah, yeah.
I will get it done. His creatinine, his BUN were out of control. So then I'm like, dude, you really checking your blood pressure? He's like, well, that's the thing. I've been checking, but it's really high. Like, well, what's really high? He's like, oh, sometimes it's 200 over like 150 or 200 over 125. And I'm like, guy, no. I go, we're done. That's it. I go, you're dropping all this crap. Yeah, I didn't drop him as a client. I go, you're dropping all this stuff. We're going down to your home replacement by your doctor. I go, we're getting rid of these foods. We're bringing your calories down. I go, I basically put him on somewhat of a renal diet, you know?
Yeah.
And watch things very carefully. I'm like, you're going to redo your labs again in 2 weeks, and then again in 6, and again in 8. And we're going to make sure these numbers come back down, because for those of you who don't know, the kidney doesn't recover like the liver does.
Yeah.
But the kidney can recover a little bit if what is going on is only acute and it wasn't chronic over a long time. So long story short, over 12 weeks, his numbers came back down to normal, but he did end up getting a small dose of lisinopril by his doctor. Blood pressure's controlled, kidney values renormalized, his body got rid of all that excess fluid within 6 weeks.
That's scary.
Recovered. Yeah, man. That's how it happens. People just go, oh, 2 more weeks, I could be in that show. I'm almost there, and then.
That's a tough mindset, man, because I've experienced it sometimes too, where you just kind of like turn a blind eye to all the things that are going wrong, because you're like, all right, I'm crushing it. I'm hitting my meals. I'm doing the cycle or whatever. And it's just, it's a tough, and especially if you haven't been checking regularly or you're just completely ignoring it, it can get to a point where it's like that, where you're getting, hopefully not anything worse than that, but
Yeah. Or they go, I don't want to know. I'm like, no. You do.
You want to know. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think it makes you perform better. I think if your health is good, you're going to feel better. You're going to kill it in the gym more. Like it's just like this whole,
And not only that, man, it's like, I tell these people, I tell my young clients, and I know they don't get it because I wouldn't have gotten either. Bodybuilding is a very small portion of your life.
Yeah.
There is a life after bodybuilding, believe it or not. And when you're there, and say you're done bodybuilding and you have kids and you have a family and you moved away and you're into something else, you don't want to have a heart attack or be roasted in a dialysis machine when you're 40 years old.
Right.
It's like you're 40, that's half of your life. That's it,
Yeah, definitely. And it just comes from, monitoring these things. I think, you can't just take a bunch of stuff and then just hope that everything's going to be, turn out all right.
Right.
There's an inherent risk that comes with this sport, right?
Right. You can monitor it and you can make adjustments and still make ground. Yeah, but the biggest mistake people make that I find is they might say you come to me and you're having issues with your health and you ask me what to do. And I say, competing's done this year. You need to do this, yes, get your health back in order and then do this. And you go, yeah, okay. And then you go ask somebody else the same question and you like his answer better.
Yeah.
And he goes, no, I had the same issue, but I'm fine. Look at me. And you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to go with what he does.
Hey, you know what that is?
I've had clients come to me for, get their kidneys back. And when I say kidneys were toast, I've seen clients come to me with liver values of a creatinine of freaking 18, BUN of like 28, and their creatinine is like 3.2, like really bad.
Yeah.
Their eGFR is down to 30, and I'm like, dude, you are in renal failure. like bodybuilding is not even a conversation right now. Conversation is to get your health back, and you know what? Crickets. Don't hear from them.
Right. But you know what that is? It's confirmation bias, right? Yeah. I'm going to go to this guy over here because he says he supports my narrative that I'm telling myself, right? They don't want to hear anything that conflicts that.
Yeah. It's a tough one, dude. It's like my biggest fear is having something happen to somebody, and because of me, and that's one part of bodybuilding that I don't like is like, we are doing things that are not great for us, and we're pushing the envelope, and that's part of the game. But we can be smart about it. But like my biggest fear would be for something bad to happen to my clients because of something I recommended,
Yeah, most definitely. But I think, You know, there are people out there who have been responsible for things, and they've been responsible for a lot of things, and you just wonder how that maybe affects their conscience. Like, you know, do you just not think about that? Like,
dude, that's the thing, because I do believe, unfortunately, in this industry, there's not a lot of people who have a conscience.
yeah, I guess so.
They just don't care, because
when you're looking at dollar signs, right?
Well, think about it, dude. It's like, and not to work on bodybuilding, this is just a fact of bodybuilding, is there's many people in bodybuilding that do it for different reasons. It's a sport of glamour, of a sport of look at me. So you attract a lot of narcissism. Yeah. You attract a lot of self-centeredness, a lot of selfishness. So you get that large pool of people. And amongst those people, they'll always start, like you said, money. They'll see their own needs as more important than anything else, anybody's else. So their decisions and their thought processes are centered around themselves, right. And they don't care what happens to anybody around their circle as long as they are progressing forward and being better, you know?
Yeah.
And you see that, and obviously that's everywhere in life, especially in politics, you know, but
oh yeah, most definitely.
It's like, it's a lot in bodybuilding, and that's, you know, once you're in it long enough and you start to meet people, you get to know who they are, and you're like, oh, I thought they were my hero, I guess not, you know?
Oh, well, you know, I've learned that from just doing this, just, you know, reaching out people to have conversations with them, man. You can tell who's nice and who's not, or who's down to earth, right? Just by asking them, hey, you know, they'll be humble enough to come on my little show and talk to me for a little bit, right?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I always think too, like I was telling Evan, and Evan made a conversation about the same exact thing when we first started. When I first started bodybuilding, about bodybuilding, he's like, just be careful, you know who you interact with, you know, because not everybody's who they say they are. I'm like, what's he talking about? Now I know what he means. But you're right. You know right away who's like legit, you know, like John Mills is legit, you know, Evan's legit, Jose Raymond's legit, you know. There's a lot of people that are just down to earth, good people that would be the same person with or without bodybuilding.
Right. You meet them at an expo and you're like, oh, this isn't the person I know on social media. Sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Right.
That's all the time.
I went to a couple. I stopped going to expos, but I went to a couple, and I was like, man, this is weird. Like, it's totally not the way it is.
It's totally weird. It's Instagram, some sort of alternate universe fantasy world.
Right. Well, yeah, you have your alternate Instagram persona, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, because I could have been a total weirdo. So, hey,
no worries, man.
I just wanted to get your just two more questions, if that's all right.
Yeah, no problem, dude.
Cool. So I wanted to talk. I've heard you talk about a little bit. What is kind of your approach to training, like how you program for your clients? I kind of wanted to know how you do that. Training.
All right. So my philosophy on training with helping clients has changed over the years. I used to believe it was a lot more about controlling somebody's volume and focusing on intensity, which and sometimes is a factor, because I believe a lot of people are doing too much junk volume, just worthless sets, repetitive in and out, but they're not carrying the intensity they need. Mm-hmm. That's one aspect. But lately, say in the last 3 or 4 years, I really kind of found out that people's execution of movements is where people fall short on the most. Mm-hmm. Why is Jay Cutler in his videos using dumbbells anywhere from 140 to 170 on presses, right? But I got guys at my gym who are legitimately half of his size doing the same weight.
Right.
But that's weird. It's weird because there's a major difference between weightlifting and bodybuilding.
Right.
Choosing weight and moving in a particular fashion to isolate a muscle to get to respond and grow. Execution, I think, is the biggest failed concept that people just don't grasp. They see a pro do 5 sets of this, 6 sets of this, 6 sets of that, and they try to mimic them. What they don't understand is, pay close attention to, is you might look at 5 different bodybuilders do a lat pull down, and then one person might be doing a pull down slightly different, and you notice they're different. While most people look at all 6 bodybuilders doing lat pull down, and it just looks like a lat pull down to them, right? They're not aware how much they're leaning back. Are they keeping their core tight as they're pulling the arm in front of them, recruiting more lats? Are they pulling with their elbows to bring their shoulder blades together? They're not paying attention to small details of how a movement is actually executed.
Yeah.
And that is what I focus on a lot with my clients, because I will immediately have them send me videos of their pressing movements, their rowing movements, leg movements, and 99% of the time, there's issues with all of them, you know? Right. And I usually will start with, hey, which exercise or body part doesn't respond well? Well, I can't get my upper chest to recruit. Okay, great. Send me a video of your upper chest. And sure enough, you'll see the muscle imbalance, making it harder to feel the upper chest because they're not getting proper function of the shoulder. Then you see them how they're pressing. They're worrying about the weight only, not what it feels like. Oh, my super spades are bothering me.
Quarter reps.
Yeah, quarter reps, because they're paying attention to the weight. They're using the weight as a measure of success and progression.
Right.
When that's not the only measure of progress.
It's most definitely a part, but it's just not everything, right?
Right. Especially if they're trying to do it every week. I haven't gotten stronger in 2 weeks. Shit, man, I've gotten stronger in 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and strong, they'll be like, okay, well, I'm going to go from a 225 bench press to a 275 in a week. Like they're like, I'll slap some extra weight on there. Like there's no
right.
Progression is very, very, like, it doesn't happen like that unless you're a new bodybuilder and you just started working out, right?
Correct. And then the third aspect of that, after you address the volume, the intensity, and the execution, is a cumulative volume over time. Where being able to increase volume and frequency of a particular body part that's not responding or responding too well. Mm-hmm. Personally, I've never liked push-pull legs. I don't like it. I don't have fun with it. It's not for me. I've always utilized a bro split, but I've increased frequency of a body part by adding in back to shoulder day, right?
Okay. That makes sense.
Adding in extra lateral raises to chest day.
Yeah.
So doing things like that. I've never, ever done, a 4-day split or 3-day split, nothing like that. The closest split I've ever done would be 2 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on, 1 day off.
Yeah, I've heard you. I saw that video, that day in the life, where you were talking about that's what you were running, right?
Yeah, and I've always done that. Even from the first time I stepped on stage at 170 with kind of poor condition to when I stepped on stage at 204 pounds with crazy condition. Same bro split, 5 days a week. Once a week. Bro splits do work. I mean, I put 40 pounds of muscle on my physique doing bro splits, just the standard, basic, boring, stupid, repetitive, same exercises for 5-6 years, and it works.
Right. Well, I like what you said, the same exercises, right? You're not like, I need to do something different every time I step in the gym.
No, it's like people go, well, don't you keep the body guessing? Yes and no. You don't need to change the body I think changing exercise every week is a mistake. If it's a multi-joint exercise. Single joint exercise, you can get away with changing probably every week. But if you're changing from a front squat to a back squat to a hack squat, front squat, back squat, you have that level of learning curve, right? It's like you have done front squat in 3 weeks, and then you do it, it's going to be a little awkward. And then the second week you do it, and you're much stronger because that gap between doing them is decreased. So I think same exercises for 3 to 4 weeks is not a problem, and multi-joint movements. But back in the day, dude, I really... the majority of weight I put on my body was really the same exercises.
Yeah.
Legs was always lunges, front squats, hack squats. I did that for like 5 years.
Yeah.
And that's it. I moved up in weight significantly, but that's it.
Yeah. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Yeah. And that's one thing that I'm happy to say I always understood. I think people get derailed today when they go, oh, hypertrophy coach is doing this. Oh, Dennis James is doing this. Oh, I see so-and-so doing this. Oh, maybe I should be doing that. I've never been one of those people.
Right.
I'm like, that's great, that's cool, but this is what's been working. Or I might see somebody do a variation of a press and be like, maybe I'll try that particular exercise, but I never done my training program.
Change the whole thing. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. No.
I think, okay, so if you start a program and you're like, okay, I'm not making progress anymore. And then you see hypertrophy coach doing this shoulder strip. You're like, oh man, my shoulders aren't growing. Instead of looking at what's wrong here, why don't I just do everything differently? It's like, well, you could have this thing that works for you because if you constantly alter it, you don't know what works and what doesn't, right? Like,
right.
That makes sense.
And address the individual problem in the program. If your front delts are having issues being developed, then change out what you're doing for your front delts.
Yeah.
Don't change out what you're doing for back and the whole entire shoulder program. If your lateral raise movements and your rear delt movements are going great, your upright rows, just change out that and then progress.
Exactly.
Jay Cutler said that in one interview. He's like, I have all these weird angles and bands people do today. He goes, I did like the same 30 exercises over and over again for like 20 years.
I watched some, as I came up, it was Jay Cutler mostly, or as I was starting bodybuilding, and I watched him do the hammer press in like how many videos, the incline hammer press. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's kind of just an observation of mine, but that's cool.
Yeah, people pay, I say this to people too, is people spend too much time paying attention to the wrong details.
Yeah.
All your energy should be spent towards how your body is responding and how it's progressing based on certain biofeedback markers. And then you implement a change through that. Don't be paying attention and wondering why. Well, I had pizza last night and I had a good workout today. I wonder what that's from. Dude, stop wasting time thinking about irrelevant stuff. Just move on. You know what I mean? Like, pay attention to the stuff that matters.
Right. The basic fundamental things, right? Yeah. Like you're saying, the form and exercise selection and things like that. Cool. Guess that's pretty much it. Oh, I wanted to defend intra-workout supplements. You said that you could give or take with them, right? Like,
yeah. So this is my take on them. If you're in a caloric deficit, of course they're going to work wonderfully well.
Right.
If you're using insulin pre-workout, of course you need to feed your insulin.
Yeah.
Personally, me using them, not using them, I feel 100% better not using them.
Yeah.
I feel wonderful. I don't, sometimes the sweet taste gets to my head. Sometimes having that liquid of carbohydrates in my belly gets to me, or it might cause me to have a premature spike and a crash in the middle of my workout, depending on how much I'm drinking when. I've tried 20 carbs, 80 carbs, 100 carbs, done it all. Until one day I decided, like, you know what, Evan never does it. And never really has. So I'm like, dude, I'm just going to scrap it for a little bit. And then I noticed within like 2 days, I'm like, dude, my workouts are awesome. Just drink water. And I felt great. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to keep it like that. So then I reintroduced it just to see because that's the best way to find out if it worked or not, right? Use it, take it away, and then bring it back. So then I brought it back, and my workout was horrible. And I'm like, I just don't feel the same. Like I feel like the digestion for me personally during the workout really doesn't do much. And not to mention, in your off season, you're eating that much food, you shouldn't really have a problem performance anyway, right? And then a lot of my research through school and intra-carbohydrate work, consumption, and supplementation with cyclists and talking about what was beneficial, what was not. It's like all the studies done with intra-workout nutrition at the time were done with Olympic athletes who were doing near 80% VO2 max for 90 minutes straight, right?
Right.
So like they're deplete their whole freaking body fast. So their consumption was about a gram of carbs per minute was the max amount they could utilize unless they added fructose mixture.
Yeah, I've read some of that study.
Yeah. So then they could absorb more and have more sustainable. But I'm like, I'm doing biceps today and triceps. So like, it's not like I'm going to be taxing my system too hard where I need 50 grams of carbs, right? Only to consume another 50, 100 carbs for my post-workout drink. But I didn't scrap it.
Well, I do use one. I was just going to say a good application of it is not performance-based. I mean, it is, but just getting extra carbohydrate calories in an off-season state where you need more food. That was the only defense that I wanted to say to you. You know what I mean? Like if you can get an extra 50 to 100, either intra or even post, right? Just liquid calories where you don't have to actually eat them. That's just the only thing I wanted to throw in there.
Right, and I agree. And this is, and some of the things I say for those listening, it's like, I'm not sitting there telling everybody they shouldn't be doing it. It's just my belief. I mean, I have clients that still use it.
Yeah.
And usually what I say is, hey, Chris, how do you feel about this? I'll tell you how I feel. And then I'll ask them, well, how do you feel when using it? And they go, well, Chris, when I use cyclic dextrins, I get a great pump. I go, well, then, Jake, we're going to keep it. Yeah. Because if it's working and you feel that way, we're going to keep it. Who gives a shit what I believe and feel? If you're feeling that, you're going to keep that.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, and that's what you've come to based off of the data that you've seen and then your anecdotal experience, right?
Right, yeah. And at the end of the day, which I hate, which I think I wish more coaches did, is having more of a liberal ideology, not politically, liberal ideology in the sense of there's more there's more gray area, right?
Yeah.
That you can float around in, and it's not cut and dry. Where some people are like, you're not doing that. It's stupid. Don't do that. Nobody should do that. I think that's a bad statement. It's like saying that one thing's not going to work for anybody. I think that everything should be very individualized, and even if it doesn't work, and every single scientific piece of paper says it's crap, but that person's having a placebo effect, then it's going to work.
Yeah.
Because we know that placebo is powerful.
Right. And then there's the possibility we just lack the data for it currently. I mean, there's so many things that we haven't actually proven or we're still learning about. I mean, it's the nutrition, the training, pharmacology, we have like almost no good data on, it seems like.
Yeah. In nutrition, we don't know much either, especially the gut, the microbiome. We don't know anything about that.
Well, and it's hard to follow someone for 80 years and see what they ate their whole lifetime and then say, oh, this is, that's probably extremely expensive and very, very, hard to do. Right.
Oh, this is a good thing about this is how mean we are. So one of our friends growing up, this is years ago, he's kept trying to be like, dude, I want to take Anadrol. I want to do Anadrol. I'm like, dude, stop. I go, no, just stay natural, do it. So finally he bugged us so much. So we're like, dude, let's just get him lysine pills. Like, acid lysine.
Yeah.
And we'll just tell him he's got to take 50 milligrams twice a day and to do a 4-week cycle. So we put it in a bottle and we just like labeled it, it was unlabeled. And we're like, dude, we got it from this guy. It's really strong. He's like, yeah, all right, cool. I'm gonna do it. So 3 days later, we hear from him. He's like, dude, I broke every PR last week. He's like deadlift went up 20 pounds. My squats up 30 pounds. He was like benched more, 10 pounds more. He goes, this stuff's great. I feel awesome. Placebo.
That's wild. Yeah.
That's a perfect example of like sometimes like in how much you believe in something, how much it will happen, and I love this story. And this one, it's like once the 4-minute mile was broken, everybody broke it a week later, right? It takes one person to do it. And then you're going to have 100 people in the next year do the same thing.
They know they're capable of that. I mean, look at powerlifting right now. Hawthorne did that right now. Everybody's chasing it, and someone's going to break it eventually. It's just how it works, right?
It's like 1,000 pounds. Like 30 years ago, it's impossible.
Right.
Oh, okay. And then now it's like, dude, 10 more years, someone's going to be doing 1,500.
Yeah, I'm sure they've said the same about the top level of bodybuilders now. There's no way it could be 280 shredded. There's no way it could be 3. I mean, if we've gone to prove. I mean, I don't know how much further we can push that, but
Ronnie Coleman, right?
Right, exactly. So that's cool. Definitely. Okay. Well, last thing, you run a nutrition business with your wife, and I see you guys' videos, and kind of just like an unrelated bodybuilding question. It kind of is though, because I feel like people they feel like they cannot have a relationship in bodybuild, and a lot of time it's just like they're either too drawn into their bodybuilding, or maybe there's more selfishness going on. But I just wanted to ask how, like, if you could give maybe some people keys to success having a relationship and maybe doing that while bodybuilding. I mean, the fact that you guys run a business together says a lot, I think.
All right. So, well, first of all, we are not the norm. We're both extremely ambitious and both extremely restless. What I mean by that is, if it's Friday night and I'm working late and she comes over, she goes, "Where are you done with work?" I'm like, "Tonight, my 9." She goes, "Okay, no problem." And she runs back in her office and she starts working more, right? So we're the same person. We're not like ever like, "Wait, you're doing that now? Come on." Right. But my experience with my clients and my own personal experience in my life relationships and the friends I've known, bodybuilding and being partners with someone else that does bodybuilding is very hard. There's no way around it. There just isn't. Unless you're a genetic freak and you don't need to apply yourself as much to the off-season contest prep and be detached emotionally to get to that condition, then you'd be fine, provided you're a girl or, whoever, if you're a girl and there's a guy, whatever people do today. If they are into partying, going out and staying out late, it's probably not going to work, right? Unless they're okay with being independent and going out with their friends and you're okay with being home, it's just not. It's really vital when there is some level of the same interest of eating healthy together, being homebodies together. maybe competing together, but you don't have to be competing together. But it is a strain of relationship either way. You know, it's just like when I'm in prep, I'm emotionally detached.
Yeah.
I am so driven and focused on what I'm doing. There is no lovey time. I don't want to have sex. Like, I'm just focused on what I'm focused on. That's it. I don't have time for small talk. I don't have time to bullshit. I don't want to watch TV. You know, that's just me. And I know a lot of my clients and friends are the same way. And sometimes their spouses reach out to me and they're like, oh, I think so-and-so's cheating on me. I'm like, no, he's not cheating on you. It's normal. Trust me. When you're starving, you don't want to have sex, and they're grouchy and they're cranky. That's normal. It is only for 3 months, but I mean, it is hard. There's no question.
Right.
And this is the last segment to that. Competing to be the best you could possibly be and continuing doing it year after year is extremely hard on the opposite person. And that doesn't matter if you're into bodybuilding, strongman, or anything. Yeah, if you are dedicated, right, if cycle is right. If you're dedicated to be the best you possibly could be, and that is what your true passion is 24/7, 365 days a year, that's going to be hard in any type of relationship.
Right.
If you are competing just for fun, then it's just here and there, and it's not a big deal. So I have some clients that will compete every year, but the other 8 months of the year, they're kind of training for fun, eating 3 meals a day, no biggie, going out, having fun, living life. Oh, I'm going to go compete again. But they're not hell-bent on being like, I want to be in a magazine cover. I want to be sponsored. I want to win Olympia. They just competing for fun. And that's a different mentality. But it also really depends on the individual's needs in a relationship. If they are very needing of attention and being priority, that's going to be difficult because no matter what, if you're into bodybuilding, that takes priority. And the female sometimes feels that, oh, everything in his life just his bodybuilding matters and I don't matter, right?
Right.
It is very difficult. And for the advice for the people listening, I would suggest that you really sit down and have a talk about, you know, what you guys need in the relationship and what you don't need during preparation, or even forewarn them. I've had a lot of issues with my clients in their relationships where they reach out to me and they're like, Chris, what do I do? I'm fighting all the time. You know, I don't know if I can do this prep any longer. The house is a mess. And I'm like, dude, you just got to sit down and like, just don't talk to her angrily thinking that she's trying to manipulate you, fail. Like, you see where she's coming from and try to get her to see where you're coming from so you guys can come up with a plan. Common ground. And be on the same page, you know? And long story short, he ended up doing fine. And after they had that talk, it worked. But the communication's vital, you know?
Right. Well, and then I think, especially in a prep environment, if like I become like neurotic, like things need to be clean in a certain spot. If I walk in the house and things are not in that spot, I get like just so pent. And I've been with my girlfriend for 5.5 years or so. She doesn't bodybuild, but she is very flexible. Like, as far as like, you know, like you said, like, well, we're going out or we're not, you know, she's just homebody, like totally chill, like she's understanding. And then the thing is, like you said, is just communication. That's just so huge. I mean, just like sitting down and saying, like, if that what you were saying, where like they're like, oh, I think he's cheating on me. Like, well, if that person just sat down with their significant other and just said, hey, this is what this is, you know, especially if it's a new thing for them, you know, lay out times to maybe have that outside of a prep environment where you guys go out and you do normal things together, you know, having that balance. I mean, in a context of, I guess this would be even a context of a bodybuilding couple where you guys set aside time for each other. But that communication is just huge, man. Like, you cannot put expectations on other people. You can't expect them to know that you are upset or
you just said it. Expectations are really the cause of most fights because you're expecting her to react a certain way or be sympathetic or compassionate to your situation, but they don't know your situation. And once the expectations not meet, you get angry, then you explode, and she gets explode, and it's a mess.
Right.
So it's have that open dialogue, even if you don't want to have it.
Yeah,
you know. And the last thing I would say this is, and this is, I think, one of the problems in bodybuilding, and I know Dave Plummer said this, is you get a bunch of men who are using anabolics. You get even women who are using anabolics. There's a lot of hormones in the air. Okay.
Yeah.
You get a lot of unfortunately infidelity, and you get a lot of people getting inappropriate in people's relationships, and relationships break apart. And I think it's very important that people set boundaries within the relationship in the industry, because I think there's a lot of inappropriateness that happens on the side, that trap some men and women, and they end up derailing, destroying the relationship, and they regret it after, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's very important to consider, and keep your, just stay in your own lane, grass not green on the other side. And I've seen it too many times, unfortunately. And then the last thing is, don't get mad at your significant other. If you never competed before, when you first started dating and you decide to compete and you don't understand why he or she doesn't compete with you, you met her before you were competing.
Right.
Right? So accept that they're not going to be into it. Because I had that before, where I don't know why she doesn't eat healthy. I'm like, dude, just let her do her thing. Like,
yeah, most definitely.
You do your thing, let her do her thing.
Okay. I mean, I like, we had that talk before, this is what I do. Like, this is what you're stepping into. Right. And I still have that sometimes where I'm like, man, I get like frustrated or something, especially in a prep environment where I'm eating this and she's over here eating ice cream. And I'm like, you kind of get like upset, and you're like, just like, I just tell myself, like, just stop it. Like, she's not a bodybuilder. She doesn't need to be bodybuilding. It's her own thing. Right. Like try to be rational in that sense. Right. It's just like, not everybody like wants to be a bodybuilder. It's, people want to enjoy ice cream and stuff like that. That's on them. That's,
it takes a lot of insight and a lot of control of your own thought process to be able to see that, which not a lot of people can do that.
Yeah. With the grass is greener thing too. It's like, if you're not taking care of home base, then the grass always does seem greener. Right.
And then after the fact, it never is. Like, damn, I stepped in shit. I'm like, yeah, man, you sure did.
All right, cool. I'll let you get out of here, man. I really appreciate you being on for so long. Are we going to see you on stage anytime soon, or what's the deal with that?
I'm not sure as of now. We've been focusing really on business. Doing a lot more nutrition-related disease and stuff like that. And we're working on moving out of Connecticut.
Oh, really?
So that's been our real primary focus at this point in time.
Whereabouts, if you don't mind me asking?
Anywhere that's lower in taxes than Connecticut.
I'm moving in 2 weeks.
Yeah, we're looking
2 weeks.
Where are you going?
Out of California.
Oh, you're in California.
I'm in California. I'm going to Arizona.
Oh, so yeah, you and I are very similar in the sense of a state that's just taxed beyond belief.
Yeah.
I'm in Connecticut, and we're looking at Florida.
Okay.
Very soon, just because Florida is in the top 3 best places to have a small business.
Yeah, most definitely. And there's a big bodybuilding community out there, so it's
dude,
a great place to be.
And then if taxes go up again, I just can't do it. I
didn't know Connecticut was that bad. Wow.
I believe Connecticut is actually the second worst next to California.
California is like the worst in every category. So
yeah, it is.
I just can't, I love my family's out here and I love it, but it's like, I just cannot justify it any longer for at least.
It's just going to get worse. Just like here, like our taxes still go up every year. And I'm like, dude, this is ridiculous.
I can't imagine the whole Corona pandemic is going to make it any better. So
no, we need to tax more. We're in a deficit.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Can you just, let everybody know if you want to plug anything, your business, please do, your Instagram, all that stuff. I'll put it on the description too, but.
Yeah, no problem. All right, guys. So I do have an app. It's on my website, Total Nutrition. And it's basically an app. You can ask Q&A. It's got a lot of videos on there. All the information I've ever provided as far as papers and such. It's very cool, very inexpensive. Just got to give general, real information on there. Our website is Total Nutrition for our services. I just let everybody know, though, we are, and we have had a wait list for almost this entire year. So if you contact me at this point in time on September 9th, I have about an 8-week wait list. So you're welcome to contact me on that wait list, but don't expect to be able to start right away. I do the best I can. I can only take so many on as I go, because I don't want to, mess up my quality of service to the individual. But I do my best to everybody. And don't think that because I'm a bodybuilder, I just do bodybuilding. Vast majority of my clients are nutrition, weight loss, nutrition, disease, getting in shape for the weddings. We do bridal shower diets, so everybody gets all wedding party, diets, or get everybody all in shape for the wedding and stuff like that. So it's not just bodybuilding. Some people get scared. They're like, "Oh, do you work with normal people?" I'm like, "That's what I do." Yeah.
Yeah, cool, man. I mean, this was a really cool conversation, and I've stemmed a lot of questions from it. So, I mean, if you would be down in the future, maybe do another one. Just, I enjoyed the conversation a lot.
For sure.
Cool, man. Hey, I really appreciate your time. Keep in touch, man. Okay.
No problem. All right, buddy. You take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you all for watching. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, like the video, and check out the description for links to all of my other services such as coaching and apparel. Thanks.